Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Medical Marijuana Awareness Series. Tonight's subject is going to be glaucoma and medical marijuana. Glaucoma is a very important, is a medical condition that affects a lot of people. In fact, it's interesting. We'll find out that 50% of the people that have it don't know they have it, which is very fascinating. And we're going to dig down into what medical marijuana can do to help and give you some suggestions on some next steps if you're looking at this as a route of administration that can help you with that particular situation. As I've mentioned in webinars that we've done before, the goal of this webinar is real simple. We started this series because we wanted to provide information to people that's accurate and that's been vetted by doctors to get you the straight scoop on how medical marijuana can help with various conditions. What I like to do is if we can have one person that's on this webinar be able to see the information, try medical marijuana or using medical marijuana gets it right and it helps them get their life back, then we feel that we've been successful with what we want to do. We're being very modest about what we're trying to do, but it's something that's very, very important and something that means a lot to us and hopefully means a lot to you. Now, there's a couple of administrative things I want to point out. There's a Q&A button right over here, and please feel free to ask questions. Chris and I are here to answer a lot of your questions and really give you an opportunity to get your voice heard. And there are some chats that are out there. There's a chat button that's over here. We'll probably look at more of the Q&A than we will the chats, although that's being monitored as well. And like I also want to mention, this is a medical marijuana webinar. So we want to keep this, the tone is something that we're really here to help and be able to promote cannabis as medicine. Tonight, I'd like to introduce my co-host, a gentleman I'm very honored to have with me. Worked with Chris for a number of years and a very knowledgeable person, not only in the area of cannabis, but also the legislation and is a moving force behind making cannabis happen here in Florida. Chris Cano, who's the executive director of Suncoast NORML. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Marc, for the introduction. I really appreciate that. So everyone, yes, as Marc said, my name is Christopher Cano. I'm the executive director of the Suncoast Chapter for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, which many of you, if you've been around, NORML's been around since 1970. It is the oldest and largest still active cannabis legalization or organization out there. And so, people always ask me, Chris, what are y'all going to do once, it's legalized? The fact is there are so many other issues that have to do with patients' rights, with quality of medicine, with education, and of course, with criminal justice reform that even once it's legalized, we still have a lot of work to continue to do. And as we know, oftentimes you can pass a constitutional amendment or a citizen-led initiative, and the politicians can still mess it up. And so we're here to make those folks accountable and provide you all a voice in outside of government and in the community for all responsible cannabis users.
Well, I think also you mentioned something that's very important, education. I think that we don't have enough education on how cannabis can help medically a lot of people. So we're looking forward to that. Tonight's subject is important, so let's dive right into it. I don't want to make this a presentation on slideware, but I do think we have to have some slides in order to be able to go through this and bring up some of the questions and some of the points we need to make. So I'm going to pick up here. I'm going to share the screen. Can everyone see it? Chris, you got it?
Yep. That's
okay, great. So again, what I want to do is the part of the beginning here is just let you know this is really providing safe, supportive, judgment-free information about medical cannabis. Again, we've had doctors look at this. There's been a lot of research done on this particular subject. But like all medications and all things that refer to you, part of your healthcare team should be your physician. And anytime you're looking at using medical cannabis, please get your physician involved, as well as your medical marijuana doctor, to be able to make sure you're getting the right options, you're getting the right information, you're getting the right education to decide what's good for you. We're just trying to bring together advocates, patients, students, researchers, doctors, to be able to create a learning experience, and that's what this is. And again, if one person can watch this webinar, learn from it, and be able to step forward and get their life back, we've accomplished what we want to accomplish. Let's talk about glaucoma itself. Glaucoma is a condition that causes damage to the optic nerve. Now, this is something that what's interesting is here in the United States, we have over 3 million people that have glaucoma, what's fascinating is 50% of the people aren't aware of it. And that was a statistic that really stuck out to me, is that this is a condition that's really almost underreported. And we'll show a little bit why it's there. It is a major contributor for blindness, which is interesting. And also with the African-American community, they're 15 times more susceptible to suffer from it than other communities. So it's something that we really need to be careful about, and something to pay attention to. Glaucoma can happen in one or both eyes, and there's a perception that if you have high blood pressure that you're going to get glaucoma. That's really not the case. A lot of people that are with normal blood pressure also get glaucoma. So it's a condition that, as we'll find out later, the medical profession does not know how it is caused. So that creates a bit of a problem for everyone as far as treatment. And again, and what we're going to find out during this webinar is every person's body is different. And that has to do with how you can use medical cannabis, but also they found out what is normal pressure on the eye for one person is different for another person. So that makes it a little more complicated for the doctors and the practitioners addressing this particular space. Now, there's different types of glaucoma. There is the one that's most prevalent is the open, what they call primary open angle glaucoma. Again, there's a lack of symptoms to this, and that's what causes a lot of people not to know that they have it. It gradually forms over time, and then one day you find out that you have pressure in your eye, or you go to an eye exam, and you find out that you have it. There's also less frequently, but also there's what they call an angle closure glaucoma, and that's something that people have had as well. And we go through and we look through the medical journals, we found out there's a number of different types of glaucoma. They all they're all different, obviously, in their own way, but the remedy from a cannabis standpoint is pretty much the same all the way down the line. It's there. Here, what we have found with cannabis is that we have found that cannabis does control what they call IOP, the interocular pressure. And then also it's something that they have found out lately, and this is something in the last 5 years especially, they found it as what they call a neuroprotective. What does neuroprotective mean? It means that we have, it has the ability to be able to protect and also potentially regenerate and to improve the function of the eye. Now, it's not a cure. That's not what we're trying to point out. All we're saying is the fact that it protects the eye is really important, and how it does that is through what they call endocannabinoids, which we'll discuss in the webinar later on, and that they're found in the nervous system as well as in the retina. And what we go with research, especially the research the last five or 7 years, has really shown us is it's been able to reduce not only interocular pressure, but also it kills the pain, stops the inflammation, and in many cases halts vomiting and nausea. Chris, have you had any experience with this?
Well, when it comes to seeing cannabis work as a neuroprotectant, I have seen it personally in my own father's experience. The whole reason that I got involved in the cannabis movement and founded the Suncoast Chapter of NORML is because my father was diagnosed with a terminal form of dementia in 2010. The doctors gave him only a few months to live, and that was just a diagnosis I wasn't willing to accept. So I really wanted to do what I could to help him. And through my research, I realized that the federal government actually owned a patent on utilizing cannabis and cannabinoids as neuroprotectants. And I saw it personally in his terminal dementia. Many years after he had lost the ability to speak, giving him a high dose grade of cannabis oil, he actually spoke for the first time. And to see my mother cry and hear his voice after 2 years of not hearing anything out of him really made a big difference. So, you know, throughout this presentation, you're going to hear some things that you may want to see more scientific research on. There's some links at the end of this presentation. But all in all, understanding that the vast majority of medical research is trial and error and anecdotal in nature when it comes to utilizing cannabis as a treatment. And that's not because our doctors don't know any better. That's because cannabis is still Schedule I federally, and it has prevented a lot of advanced research barriers. So most of the research you're going to see have come from other trials and even other countries such as Israel that are on the cutting edge of it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So what I do want to do is, it's interesting that when I was researching glaucoma, it's interesting that the medical community really doesn't know what the cause of glaucoma is. And of course, as doctors, they want to know the cause to be able to come up with a treatment. And this is something that's still baffling a lot of folks. They do know that there are what they call endocannabinoid receptors present in the retina. Now, why do we point that out? Because these are the receptors that basically are open to and work with CBD, THC, CBN with cannabis. So we know the cannabis receptors are there, and it is something that's present, and that's why we know that cannabis does in fact help. What's interesting when you talk to your doctor, and I found this to be very interesting, is that there was an initial study done in 1971. It had 9 patients that were smoking medical marijuana, and what they did find is that cannabis is effective in relieving those patients' symptoms. They also found out that because they were smoking cannabis, it only lasted 4 hours. Now, that study has become like almost a benchmark for a lot of the doctors that are out there, and that was done 40 years ago. Since then, what we have found out is that there's other forms of administration besides smoking, like tinctures, oil, vaping, that really help, that really identify and can help with cannabis. So a lot of the findings that were the drawbacks have now become overcome, have now been overcome. What's interesting is a lot of the medical cannabis literature still references the 1971 study. So just be aware that a lot of the doctors aren't getting a lot of information right now about medical cannabis and also how it works. And the one study that they have is something that, again, is over 40 years ago. And our job, Chris and my job, and a lot of people's job, is to really provide the information to doctors to let them know that we have moved forward, especially the last 5 years. We found out that THC really helps with glaucoma. CBD with THC, especially in smaller doses, is effective at handling the symptoms. So again, I'm defending the doctors in a little way, in one way, because they're really handcuffed with data, and that's what we're trying to provide them, is more information about medical cannabis. Now, what are the doctors concerned about? When we do talk to doctors about it, they're concerned that cannabis could potentially increase the patient's blood pressure, and that is true. And in certain cases, that would potentially aggravate glaucoma. So that's one of the things that the doctor does watch. It doesn't mean you shouldn't use cannabis for glaucoma. It's just something that the doctors have to pay attention to that's out there. Also, there's a lot of doctors that are concerned that the patients will get high, unexpectedly high, from using cannabis. And we'll address that as we go along. The difference between recreational and medical cannabis is that really in medical cannabis, we try to avoid that high. We try to provide the medicine without the high that's out there. And so we'll address a little bit about that dosing and different forms to be able to get into that. But there's also been little research on glaucoma and cannabis, and candidly, physicians want more research, and so do we. We being a Schedule I drug here in the United States, it's very hard to find research with cannabis at all. However, what few people know is that the United States government, AKA your tax money and my tax money, has been funding research into medical cannabis since 1964. And I'm going to say that again. We have been funding research, the United States government has been funding research through the National Institute of Health, NIH, it has been funding research into medical cannabis since 1964. And where we did that was in Israel. We started working with Dr. Raphael Meshulam in Israel. He's considered to be the godfather of medical cannabis. Obviously, he's been at this for over 50 years. And what's even more fascinating is the graduates from his program, because he's part of a university, the University of the Ben Gurion University, as well as University of Jerusalem. They've been doing a lot of research on this. They've built a multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry in Israel, and they've become the leaders in the forefront of being able to do research. So a lot of our information that we're using tonight is not coming from the United States, it's coming from outside the United States. And that's one of the problems we have, is to try to open up research here in the United States. I think, Chris, you've been trying to address that, right?
Indeed. You know, the Schedule I status of cannabis at the federal level creates so many barriers. A good friend of mine, Dr. Sue Sicily, was recently working on a study to examine the effects of cannabis in treating PTSD in our veterans, and the amount of hoops that she had to jump through, the amount of agencies required to go through, really does show that the roadblocks to research still remain with the Schedule I status. And until Congress actually does something about it, we're still going to have to see most of the research coming from out of country in places like Israel and Spain that are actually doing this research. And so later this year, we're hoping to see some type of movement federally. You know, Chuck Schumer in the U.S. Senate is the first Senate Majority Leader to actually support and said that they should have, he said on February 1st, him, Cory Booker, and Ron Wyden from Oregon are working on a federal bill in the Senate. And of course, if any of you were paying attention to last November, the MORE Act, which is the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, passed the United States House for the first time in history. So federally, we should see some type of legislation coming out later this year, and hopefully, you know, by the end of the year, signed and across President Biden's desk. And you know, there'll plenty of opportunity to give input and reach out to your United States senators and U.S. congressmen. But all in all, removing those barriers to research is one of the key tenets of marijuana reform right now in America.
Yeah, and that's key, but also understand a lot of the data that we're giving you, and a lot of there is research being done. Just because we're not doing it in the United States doesn't mean it's not being done around the world, and especially Israel, it's very active. That's why we're fairly confident to be able to provide the information that we are in this particular webinar. Now, I'm talking about the efficacy here. I picked out a few of the research studies that were out there, and I'm not going to go through them in depth. You will receive at the end of this webinar, you'll receive probably early next week an email that has information that has the recap of this webinar. It'll have a copy of the video, it'll have a copy of the presentation, it'll have all the research information, it'll give you some links to some benefits that you have from watching this particular webinar. And so I'm just kind of really showing you that there has been a lot of movement, and there's been a lot of movement, especially the last 5 to 7 years in the area of glaucoma and cannabis, where people are looking at it as something that is something that's an option for medical treatment. I know that in many cases, patients like my mother, who was being treated for breast cancer, went in and talked to her doctor, went in for a glaucoma treatment because she had glaucoma, and the doctor told her that she doesn't have it anymore, it's gone. And she was kind of surprised. And when he asked her what she was doing, and she said medical cannabis, she said, yep, that works, it's there. That's part of the entourage effect, which we'll talk about later about medical cannabis. So it's surprising a lot of people that are using it for other reasons, that all of a sudden it's helping with the glaucoma and it's out there. But there is efficacy, from an efficacy standpoint, I think we're standing on a pretty solid base. What's your thoughts, Chris?
Well, all in all, if it works for you, the decision is between you and your physician. And that's always been a tenet of the advocacy that we at the Suncoast Chapter NORML continue to push, is that politicians need to get out of the patient-doctor relationship.
Right. Now, I do want to point out something. And by the way, thank you for everybody for watching the webinar. We really do appreciate you taking the time today to dig down on this. For doing that, there's a couple of things that, again, you'll get copies of this in the follow-up. Anytime we do one of these webinars, just be aware that there's a recording of this particular presentation, as well as all the ones we've done last quarter and the quarter before, and you can find it at Marijuana Aware. So if you have a friend or somebody who wants to look at this webinar, please pass that on. But also, when you also have capability of going out and accessing something called the Mmtc Patient Information Booklet. Now, what is that? A lot of people ask questions about what is cannabis, how does it work, how do I get my card, how does the card work? And then also, more importantly, this particular patient information brochure has discounts with the major dispensaries, like Trulieve, for example, and Move, and those types of folks. So you have access to this. There's a web link here, and you'll get it again in the follow-up information. Please access it, because I think it's important. It's important that you be able to get information at your fingertips to be able to look at medical cannabis. And again, this document was built from a patient's point of view and is updated literally every month. Now, if you are also looking at getting a medical marijuana card, you can get 10% discount off your card, off your doctor's visit at Mmtc. There's a phone number here. Please call that number. There's a coupon code of MMAW10, and that'll get you the discount. It's to book your appointment, which will kind of help you get started on your journey for medical cannabis. And then also, if you're looking at hemp or CBD-based products, we do have a website. It's called My Botanical Wellness. And again, the link is here. And by using MMAW10, that you can get a discount on any products that are out there. So it's something we wanted to do to say thank you for taking your time. And it's something that hopefully can help you on your journey to using cannabis as an option for glaucoma treatment. Now, I'm going to dive into how cannabis can help. I think we are going to dive, I should say, into how cannabis can help with medical cannabis. And I don't know how many people have ever heard of or have seen the endocannabinoid system. But endocannabinoid system is something that exists in every human being, in every mammal. And it's something that has really come to light, especially since 1994, in the medical journals. It was discovered actually in the 1940s, but really not reported on and used very often. But it's interesting that it is out there, and it is a series of receptors that we have in our body. Just like we have a nervous system, we have a series of receptors, CB1 and CB2 receptors that are out there. Chris, you got some comments about this? I know that this was kind of, it's something that not a lot of people know about.
Sure. So, all in all, the human body itself, it wasn't discovered until the mid 90s, actually has an entire system called the endocannabinoid system. Endo meaning endogenous. Your body naturally produces these compounds on its own. And so for many people who have certain diseases, debilitating and chronic conditions, your body itself is not producing adequate cannabinoids to actually have your immune system or your nervous system address the issues that you're having. So in many ways, cannabis functions as a dietary or vitamin supplement by providing you these cannabinoids that your body's not naturally producing in a plant form, which are known as phytocannabinoids. And so THC, CBD, and CBN all have their own, endogenous, natural, synonymous cannabinoids that are produced by your body. And so, when you're lacking those, or your body for some reason is sick and not producing them, you can supplement by utilizing cannabis. And that's why you see so many health benefits for a variety of things. We're not saying that cannabis is a panacea and it will cure everything, but the reason that it does treat such a wide variety of chronic debilitating illnesses is because it does mirror the body's own naturally produced chemicals, which help regulate the immune system, which cover everything from appetite to pain to sleep to inflammation to other neurological disorders.
Yeah, that's important, Chris. I think a lot of people didn't know that this is how your body regulates itself. I mean, the human endocannabinoid system works like a lock and key with both CBD, CBN, THC, the main components that you find in cannabis. And this is how your body controls memory, pain, your appetite, inflammation, your mood, a number of different things. This has been something that kind of a startling discovery of how important this particular system is within your body. What's interesting is we have CB1 receptors primarily found in the brain and central nervous system. We have CB2 receptors that are primarily found in our internal organs and our immune system. So there is, and again, as I pointed out earlier, there are endocannabinoid receptors that are in the retina. So this is something that goes throughout your whole body. What's fascinating is, as Chris was mentioning, our body produces endocannabinoids, and that it does naturally. This is how your body regulates itself. This is how your body regulates, again, appetite, pain, pleasure, mood, that type of thing. So when your neurological system sees there's a problem, this is how your body regulates it. It's out there. Now, photoendocannabinoids, which is we find with cannabis, also can do that. They can also help work in conjunction with and in partnership with your endocannabinoids of your body to be able to manage your body, be able to manage itself. Why would you use it? I'll give you a prime example. I'm a senior citizen, and my body doesn't produce as many endocannabinoids as it did many, many years ago. Now, in my particular case, I had a left knee surgery replacement, so I do have some inflammation from that. But more importantly, I had the ambiance of being rear-ended in a car accident, and so I ended up with 7 herniated discs in my neck and 2 herniated discs in my back. And so my body knows there's a problem and wants to be able to address that, especially the inflammation related to that. And by using cannabis, what I'm able to do is supplement my body's normal endocannabinoids to be able to help me. Now, there's something else that's out there, and Chris, I'm going to have you comment on this as well. There's a lot of synthetics that are coming out into the market, and we hear a lot about that. My particular position on this is really interesting. I want to let people know that they exist. So when you hear about them, I want you to know that they fall in that category. But I don't see how, in fact, if pharma cannot reproduce an apple, they can't reproduce an orange, they certainly can't reproduce a banana. And so what we're finding out is a lot of the reproductions that they're doing are parts of cannabis. There are 450 medical components to cannabis, but it's not cannabis itself. And these natural components work together as a one-on-one treatment to be able to help you. So be very careful of synthetic cannabinoids like Marinol, which is THC only, which really only use it under strict guidance from a doctor. And it's something that's being promoted a lot by the pharma industry. Is that something that you're seeing, Chris?
Well, there was a definite craze back in the late, 2000s, 2009, 2010, where we saw synthetic cannabinoids, in particular JWH 108, which was developed in a lab because a lot of labs did not have access to utilizing phyto-based cannabinoids like THC. In fact, University of Mississippi, Oxford was the only place that was allowed to grow it as part of the government's, National Institute of Drug Abuse program. So in many cases, like at the University of Auburn, they developed synthetic cannabinoids to do research on rats. And what we noticed was that, someone managed to figure out how they synthesized it and started selling synthetic cannabinoids, over the counter at gas stations all up and down Florida, and marketing it as incense. And on it said, a little disclaimer, not for human consumption. So understanding that synthetic cannabinoids were never meant for human consumption. And so, ideally, you want to use the stuff your body naturally produces that you get through your diet. And if your body is deficient in some type of way, natural plant-based phytocannabinoids are probably the better way to go than utilizing the synthetic ones. As Marc had pointed out earlier, the synthetic ones do have side effects.
Right, that's exactly. And of course, plants grow in nature. Everyone can grow that plant in nature, and there's no patent on it. So that's what the big rub is with the pharma industry. I'm not anti-pharma. I'm just saying that's their dilemma. They can't lock you out. They have to allow open competition in this. But again, this endocannabinoid system is, again, for appetite, pain, pleasure, sensation, mood. This is how your body regulates itself. So let's talk a little bit about how this works, because this is very important. Your brain has brain-derived what they call endocannabinoids. When it triggers, your neurological system says there's a problem, it triggers those. And again, you can have photoendocannabinoids help you. It would help your body. And what a lot of people perceive is that cannabis goes directly into the CB1 and CB2 receptors. And in reality, they don't. What happens is when you're using cannabis, the cannabis properties are stored in your fatty acids that are in your body. And the neurons in your body, your nervous system, knows it has a problem. And when it does that, it takes those fatty acids and turns them into long-chain fatty acids. And this is very important because once it turns it into long-chain fatty acids, your body then produces the medicine it needs, and it distributes it through your bloodstream. And this is really important because it's your body making and producing the normal medication that it uses to manage itself that's out here. Now, there's two things about this slide that are really important that explains a couple of things. First of all, no one has ever died from using cannabis. In fact, no one's ever died from the use of cannabis, both recreationally or medically. And this explains why. The reason is your body knows that you have a problem. You don't need a doctor that tells you that I have inflammation in my knee or pain in my back. I don't need a doctor to tell me that. I get it from my neurons. But your body knows it has to do something to address that particular issue. So it's interesting how it's a natural substance in your body. It's not a foreign substance. And being a natural substance, chances of it doing something to harm you, of course, is zero. The other thing is we have something called the entourage effect. What is the entourage effect? Entourage effect means that I take cannabis for one reason, maybe it's glaucoma, and I find out that the pain in my shoulder goes away, or I find out that it helps me with my arthritis. Again, your body knows where the problems are. It knows its natural process to be able to address those. And by being able to have cannabis in your body, it'll address not only the primary reason that you took cannabis, but also a lot of the secondary reasons, and it gives you better, put your body into what they call homeostasis. In other words, in a natural order that makes it a lot better and a lot healthier. Chris, there's a lot of talk about this, isn't there? About this process.
Indeed, cannabis in itself, just anecdotally from my own experience, has been used oftentimes, like you were saying, it helps to develop homeostasis and it acts as an immune regulator in many cases. So, cannabis for someone who is, for example, suffering from anorexia or has a serious loss of appetite, can increase that appetite. But also, if you overeat and you take high doses of cannabis, you can also cause you to throw up. Again, it's going to, especially if you're eating a lot of these junk foods that we have out here in the world, a lot of processed foods, cannabis itself oftentimes in high doses can trigger an immune response. So there's still a lot more research to be done. But all in all, one of the most important things to remember about cannabis is the reason no one dies from a cannabis overdose is because it is not a respiratory suppressant, unlike opioids. And so, it doesn't matter, if you smoke too much, your lungs are going to tell you, and you're going to cough, hey, slow down. But all in all, if you were to take high doses of cannabis oil, it would not stop you from breathing, which is why no one has ever died from a cannabis overdose.
Sure. So, and this is very important. I think this is where, again, the comfort that you're not going to die from it, the comfort that there is something that you can be doing about it is really important to a lot of people. Now, let's talk about cannabis itself. Really, there are two major components to it, CBD and THC. Chris, why don't you walk us through what they are?
Sure. So, two of the most prevalent cannabinoids found in cannabis products that you have available to you here in the state of Florida are CBD, which is cannabidiol. That's the non-psychoactive component. It also has been able to be sourced from hemp. And so that's a clear distinction that a lot of people in just the last few years, have questions about. So in the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp is now considered an agricultural product, and the federal government defines that as any strain of cannabis, essentially, that has less than 0.3% THC. And there's also talks right now about raising that to up to an entire 1%. So what you see right now is the availability of a lot of hemp-sourced CBD products available to people over the counter at Walmart, at various drugstores, at your local glass gallery or dispensary, and sometimes even in a gas station off the side of the highway. Again, I just have to caution folks, you should consult your doctor before doing any type of medical treatment and ask if cannabis is right for you. And then perhaps, not buying something from a gas station off the highway that you would consider your medicine is always a good, safe.
Chris, one of the reasons we created our My Botanical Wellness site was because a lot of people were asking that there's a lot of, candidly, we tested 132 hemp products, hemp-based CBD products, and found that only 2 of them had in the bottle what was claimed on the outside of the bottle. Now, in defense of Nikki Fried, she did a great job this year. She passed actually beginning of this year. Beginning of 2020, a bill that says that on the side of every bottle of CBD made from hemp, as well as cannabis, there has to be a QR code so that you can actually see what's in it. And she actually finds organizations and retail outlets that don't carry products that don't have that on there. So I'm going to give her kind of a real big plug because she's done a lot to help with the safety of people here in the state of Florida. But I think don't use a product unless you know what's in it, and making sure that what's in the bottle is exactly what you're buying from a CBD standpoint. And of course, that's not a problem when you're using medical cannabis, because the dispensaries have a very tight testing protocol. But it's something to pay attention to. Tell me about THC.
Well, tetrahydrocannabidiol, THC, is the psychoactive component of the cannabis plant. All right. And understanding that delta 9 THC has typically been the most prevalent and psychoactive component that has been studied in the plant for the past, since the 60s, right? Since the Dr. Meshulam discovered it. The fact of the matter is that now they're realizing that there also is delta 8 THC, and they've been able to even source that from the hemp plant now. So in this recent phenomenon is that there is now at many of these wellness places and dietary supplements, delta 8 THC being offered, which isn't as potent as delta 9, but can still have some psychoactive effects and is actually legal and over the counter because it's being sourced from hemp crops. So just understanding that, again, if you're going to go to any place that either is going to have delta 8 THC or cannabidiol, making sure you first consult your doctor. And second, like Marc said, ask for testing. Make sure that the retailer you're purchasing it from actually knows where they're getting it from, and that it's been laboratory tested for safety, for pesticides, for heavy metals, and also for content as well.
Right. Now, when we talk about cannabis, we talk about hemp and marijuana. These are actually 2 very distinctive plants, aren't they? Chris, you want to address the differences?
Sure. So, cannabis sativa and cannabis indica are essentially, and there's also Cannabis ruderalis, which is a third species of the cannabis plant that is in the modern taxonomy. But the fact is that Cannabis indica tends to be a shorter, more stout plant, and it has different health benefits and different utilization versus Cannabis sativa, which tends to be the taller plant. And Cannabis sativa can be bred for low THC content, depending on how the grower wants to grow it and what the end result purposes is. Hemp has been around and has been a staple crop in America since the beginning. I mean, Thomas Jefferson himself at one point was trading hemp in exchange for rifles for the Continental Army. So understanding that hemp has been used to make rope, to make sails for ships, to make paper. One of the reasons you hear the word canvas in painting is because that is actually derived from the word cannabis, and most of those canvases were derived from hemp originally. So understanding that the stalks and the fibers in the sativa, because it grows so high, is what is the value of it, and that's why you get hemp from the Cannabis sativa plant. And essentially, they're cousins, but the same cannabinoids can be sourced from both.
Sure. And hemp has been a very important product. For example, in ropes here in Florida, we were actually one of the top big makers of ropes up until, in fact, fascinatingly enough, all the way through the war, even though it was made illegal. So tell me a little bit about marijuana. It's actually, marijuana is more of a plant. It's more of a bush. That's why they call it weed, right?
Well, marijuana itself, that term was popularized in the 20s and 30s by prohibitionists to essentially scare the American public and the American political establishment into a plant that was being brought over by Mexican immigrants and farm workers. And so by being able to, demonize these immigrant groups and demonize the plant that they were utilizing, while they're working in the fields all day, was one way in which they were able to advance prohibition. And if you go back and look at much of the reefer madness propaganda coming out of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, you can see it. But the fact is that both of these plants are cannabis. Cannabis indica, oftentimes I would say, the nickname is "it'll make you in the couch" is a good moniker to kind of figure it out. And Cannabis sativa oftentimes will give you more of a cerebral high, and rather than having those sedative body-like effects on you. So and that's pretty much the two distinct differences that I could point out to folks that would be practical. If you're going to use Cannabis indica, definitely do not operate heavy machinery and don't have much plans for the rest of the day. Cannabis sativa can essentially leave you being able to be more functional. But again, understanding that rest, relaxation, and actually sitting down is part of the healing process for a lot of folks who have chronic debilitating medical conditions. So, passing out and going to sleep because you utilize too much Cannabis indica is not necessarily a bad thing. It's part of the body's natural healing process.
Sure. And we talked earlier about the medical components in cannabis. I think there are 450 medical components that they found. This is what they call a CBD wheel. And in fact, there are newer ones being produced. They're not finished yet, but they have even more components. But what you can see is we hear when you're in the cannabis space, you hear about CBG and you hear about CBDA and you hear about THC delta. You talked about delta 8 and delta 9s. These are kind of this is the components within cannabis, but these are also some of the things that it helps relieve. So for example, delta 8 is great at relieving pain, for example. Chris, you want to talk about the CBD wheel?
Sure. So these are the various components that you see, that are available in the plant. Understanding that utilizing, full spectrum cannabis oil. So you're going to see that a lot of times when you go to look at different products in the various dispensaries. Full spectrum means that the individual cannabinoids have not been isolated, right? It's actually still in its natural form, with all the various ones in there. Marc touched a little bit about the entourage effect. These various components of the cannabis plant work together in synergy to develop homeostasis to bring you that wellness that your body is seeking. Oftentimes if you're just using an isolate, which is what you'll see in some cases. You may get isolates, it's for severe pain. So a lot of dispensaries have that available as THC isolates or CBD isolates, depending on what your level is or how severe it is. You may want to use one versus the other. Again, THC is definitely a great pain reliever, and it helps, with the inflammation. As you can see, Delta 9 THC helps with the nausea and the vomiting. A lot of times you may be on other medicines as well that could be causing side effects for some of these conditions that you're suffering from. And so, again, consult your doctor so that way you and your doctor are on the same page if any of the other medications you're taking could have any adverse effects by utilizing these other cannabinoids. And that's why it's so important that you do see a doctor that is actually certified to recommend medical cannabis in Florida.
Right. Now, what's interesting is when I discovered this, I got into this industry 7, almost 8 years ago. When I started seeing these things, I realized that this very much is medicine. There was this perception that just go smoke a joint on the front porch and you'll be okay. And a lot of people that did that weren't helped. What we're finding out today is that if you use the right mix of not only just of the different components of cannabis, but also the terpenes. Terpenes are important to be able to help us be able to get to get the relief that we need. So to understand that, let's talk about sativa versus indica, because another term we hear a lot is sativa and indica. I know when I got in the industry 7, 8 years ago, that was pretty much what was people talking about. And really, we've kind of moved a long way. We still have sativa and indicas, but we moved a little bit away from that. So you want to talk about the differences between them, Chris?
Well, we kind of touched on it, but before I kind of get into the sativa versus indica a little bit in depth, one of the questions that's been asked here in the question and answer from Martha was, because of all the different products available, the various delivery methods, different strengths, CBD to THC ratios, terpenes, full spectrum versus isolates, how does a patient decide what product to try for glaucoma in particular? And, for some people, they haven't found their doctors to be very helpful in this area. Part of it goes back to, doctors themselves being educated in medical school around the endocannabinoid system itself and how it plays into wellness overall. There is literally, on one hand, you can count how many medical schools in America actually even cover it. I mean, they'll touch on it very briefly in their textbooks, but again, understanding that you want to see a doctor that's certified to recommend medical cannabis in the state because they've actually done the trainings and the workshops necessary. And we're going to cover here shortly in some future slides some strains that you may want to look for when you go to the various medical marijuana treatment centers in Florida that can help you with your symptoms that you're experiencing due to glaucoma.
So, yeah, it is interesting in that I had an opportunity to live, for example, in Switzerland for 6 years. And I definitely worked in Europe for over 14 years. And what's fascinating is that European doctors are trained on holistic medicine. In other words, they understand holistic medicine. They understand things like cannabis. We're here in the United States, the medical community, the medical schools don't address holistic products, cannabis being included. And that's a lot of it has to do with the influence of the pharma industries that just don't want people to know about these things. And I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just stating what is. Without the doctor having knowledge of it, it's hard for them to be able to provide a lot of things. That's why we spend a lot of time educating. That's why one of the reasons people ask me, why do I work with the Medical Marijuana Awareness Clinic, Medical Marijuana Treatment Clinics of Florida, Mmtc, as well as other doctors throughout Florida, not just them. But part of my role is to be able to educate these doctors and provide them the information that they're not getting from the medical journals and the medical schools that are out there. But it's a process that we're just starting. It's a process that takes a couple of years, and we're getting more and more of it out there. If you can't find a medical cannabis doctor that knows about glaucoma, my recommendation is you saw this phone number for MMTC, give them a call. They can put you in touch with a doctor in your area. And again, almost all the MMTC doctors have been trained not only on cannabis, but also on glaucoma. They can probably help you with that. So it's something that you might want to take a look at. I'm not recommending that you make a bunch of changes. All I'm recommending is this is a good information source for you. One other thing I want to point out is that almost all the dispensaries, Trulieve, Move, for example, they have a consulting service and it's free. If you call them up, you can actually set up an appointment. You can do it over the phone. You can do it in person. We recommend over the phone, obviously, in this COVID restricted environment. But you can actually get on the phone and talk about, for example, glaucoma and the products that they have and what can help them. So that's a very important resource to take a look at as well. So, Chris, what's happened, I think, over the last couple of years is this, although Sativa is one type of plant and Indica is another, Sativa is more energetic and Indica is more relaxing. That's why they call it in the couch, right?
Indeed. You know, and those distinctions have held true. However, as you said, Mark, what you're alluding to is over the years in the legal cannabis markets in particular, understanding California's had a medical cannabis market since 1996. You know, the breeders, the growers of cannabis have hybridized a lot of these two distinct strains, where many of the strains that you get available today are hybrids. You know, they're 50-50 indica to sativa. You know, people are cross pollinating these plants and trying to produce, you know, new strains of cannabis to help with a wide variety of symptoms. Case in point, Charlotte's Web. For many of you who saw the CNN documentary by Sanjay Gupta a few years back, Charlotte Figge out of Colorado, who God rest her soul recently passed from COVID-19. Her parents were utilizing, you know, a high CBD strain that the Stanley brothers out of Colorado specifically developed to treat, you know, children with Dravet syndrome and serious seizures and such. Because they were afraid of the effects of, you know, what THC could have on them. But as the research comes along, you know, the boogeyman that THC is oftentimes to be unfounded. As you can see, THC, especially for those of you suffering from glaucoma, can help with the inflammation, which a lot of times comes from that buildup of intraocular pressure and you know, other symptoms that you're experiencing.
Sure. And what's interesting is, again, since I've been in the industry, I've seen a lot of what they call the cannabinoids be created. These are the dispensaries producing products that address a lot of the medical conditions that are out there. They're called hybrids. So when you walk into a medical cannabis dispensary and you say, hey, I have, the doctor will give a recommendation based on your condition. Usually the bud tender, the person that's there, will talk to you about your particular situation, and then they'll make a recommendation. And that's based on the fact that they know the products and the cannabinoids that they can match to your particular condition. And especially that's also driven by terpenes, which we'll talk about in a minute. Terpenes help to be able to guide that. But one important aspect to look at is cannabis is something that really depends on your biology, the biology of your body. Every person's body reacts differently. And I kind of draw an analogy, makes it easier for people to understand that every person's body is different, meaning some people who take a drink of alcohol, they can have one shot and they're drunk. I have a friend of mine who literally, if he takes one drink, he's done for the night. I have other friends of mine that can drink the whole bottle and they're just getting going. This has to do with your metabolism. It has to do with your biology. It has to do with your tolerance for certain things. And that's what's important about cannabis, because if our bodies are so different, dosing becomes important. What is people's susceptibility to THC versus CBD, and how do they react to it? And that's something where we have a mantra called go low and go slow. When you first start with medical cannabis, we have small doses of both THC and CBD. We found out how your body reacts. We found out if in fact it's helping you. And then we'd be able to adjust up the CBD, up the THC, and or the amounts based on how that goes along. And we'll talk more about this as we go along. But I think it's very important. The key to using medical cannabis is dosing. A lot of people will buy a first product, it doesn't work, and they quit. And this isn't a process where you take 2 pills and call me in the morning. That's not how this works. This is more like something that is like a vitamin pill, that what you're doing is you're supplementing your body's natural processes. And by being able to do that, you do that on a continual basis, not just once and all of a sudden it goes away. There's no magic wand. Cannabis isn't a magic wand or fairy dust. What it is it's something that can be able to help you. And a lot of it also depends on how you actually use it. So let's talk about terpenes for a second. Chris, you want to talk about this?
Sure. So, you know, since 1964, where Dr. Meshulam first isolated, you know, THC from the plant in his studies in Israel, you know, and now in the late 90s, they isolated CBD. you know, the terpenes are now essentially the latest round of research that has been going on in the cannabis plant. And some of you might ask yourself, well, what is a terpene? Well, terpenes are the essential oils that are found in the plant, but they also exist in nature in other plants. And so these are some of the main terpenes that you're going to find out there. And you'll see that, you know, if you've ever smelled certain cannabis plants, some have a fruity smell to them. Others have a more peppery or spicy smell. And so this is due to those terpenes. And also understand that these various terpenes combust at different temperatures. So, you know, you can get a different flavor profile from a cannabis concentrate by burning it at a different temperature. So some people are in favor of, you know, low temperature dabs, if you will, is what is the common term for, you know, essentially, you know, heating up a nail and dropping a small dose of cannabis concentrate into it, and it'll give you a different flavor profile. You know, again, you should consult your doctor for understanding a little bit more. This is the kind of the cutting edge research. Not every doctor is up to date on this, but there are a lot of resources out there for you to kind of understand these various terpenes. One I like to point to in particular is myrcene, which is actually also found in black pepper. And so a common old wives' tale or, you know, just remedy, if someone's having a panic attack from consuming too much cannabis, it's always said to take some ground black pepper and put it on their tongue. And one of the reasons behind this is because myrcene itself actually has anti-anxiety properties.
Yeah, what's interesting is, what few people know is that when we're doing the getting your dosing correct, if you keep CBD oil, I recommend everybody looking at medical cannabis as a treatment option. They have a jar or a bottle of CBD oil. If you start getting high or you start getting into an area where you're not feeling comfortable, take more CBD. What it does is it counteracts the THC and will take you down from that high. I think it's very important. Now it takes a few minutes of work, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but it will act as something that'll help you quite a bit. That's just kind of a note on the side is how we can help people do the dosing. But really, the concepts of the terpenes are very important because this is what really brings home this is what differentiates the different cannabis products and how it will help you personally. I know when I first began to use medical cannabis, it was from my automobile accident. I went into the dispensary and I said, you know, they looked at my recommendation from the doctor. They talked to me about what was going on, and there's a lot of products in the background. And the bud tender came out and said, here's what I recommend that you use. And I kept wondering, how the hell do they know? So on my second visit, I got bolder and I asked them, and they said it's real simple. We took a look at the cannabinoid profile, and then we also took a look at the terpenes that would be able to address your situation. In my situation, I was trying to manage pain, and I was trying to manage inflammation. And so they were able, as you can see, they were able to look at the different terpenes and recommend products based on that. And so that's why it's daunting to walk into a dispensary with all these products. But once you understand what you're trying to achieve, they can actually boil that down to the ones that are targeted for you. This is very much medicine, very, very much medicine. Is that correct, Chris?
Indeed. You know, people always talk about, the recreational use of cannabis, but to quote Tommy Chong, all cannabis use is medicine. What many people are arguing is whether or not you should be able to get it over the counter without a doctor's recommendation in many of these states.
Sure. But, you know, it's interesting because the endocannabinoid system is like the highway for you. The anandamide are like the driver. That's what pushes it through the blood system. But really, cannabis is the passenger. But the terpenes are really what navigates. It's like a GPS. That's what really navigates and addresses, again, the inflammation, or it addresses the pain. In my particular case, my regime that I use, I'm trying to address pain. The 7 herniated discs in my back, it's in my neck, excuse me. I have to pay a lot of attention to this. And so I have to pay attention to pain, but I also have to pay attention to the inflammation. Because if I can reduce the inflammation, both in my knee and also in my neck, it reduces the pain. So it's not just a matter of attacking pain with the THC, it's also a matter of attacking the inflammation. And as the inflammation goes down, my pain goes down. And this is where I pay a lot of attention to the terpenes when I go and I buy products that are on the market.
Mark, one of the questions in the chat coming from one of the attendees is that, you know, they have some various topicals and they have a heavy lavender smell to them. And they're asking, are those natural terpenes? Some thought the smell was so strong, maybe they added lavender oil into it, but it does work for muscle pains. Well, I want to point out on this is that in the extraction process for certain cannabis concentrates, you will find that growers sometimes will add terpenes back in to the process to give them certain flavor profiles. And that's why I said, if you're looking for full spectrum cannabis, that full spectrum, typically, if you see that on a product, it means that the terpenes themselves and the other cannabinoids have not been pulled out of that plant. They haven't been isolated. But we're seeing more boutique products for folks where they just want it to taste good and they want it to relieve their pain. So you're seeing more cannabis concentrates with the terpenes put back into them for various flavor profiles. So I just wanted to point that out to folks. If you have a question about it, be sure to ask the associate or representative at the Medical Marijuana Treatment Center, were the terpenes put back in? Is this full spectrum? And also consult your doctor for the best product that's going to work for you.
Sure. And answer that question directly, linalool, which is lavender. And that's one of the terpenes that's found in cannabis. And it's not necessarily, they're not adding a third-party component. It's something that the cannabis plant grows itself and is available in it. And again, it's great for anti-inflammatory, bronchial inhaler. A lot of people, people have used essential oils where they've used lavender to be able to just relax and be able to put themselves in a good spot. It's the same type of thing that goes on with cannabis. That's what linalool is. And again, a
good analogy is how they fortify white bread, right? The grain itself has nutrients, but the processing of the bread causes to lose it. They got to put it back in there, and so that's what you're seeing sometimes. So just ask those questions to the people that you're working with and the products that you're purchasing.
Sure, and again, when you go to the dispensary, the person behind the counter is trained on the different products, and they do pay a lot of attention to terpenes. And so you'll be able to, as well as the cannabinoids, so they'll be able to really bring home a product. They'll be able to let you focus on a product that really helps you quite a bit. And that's what's important. That's what differs recreation from medical cannabis. Medical cannabis is medicine. Based on your condition, we know today, especially with the cannabinoids and the terpenes that are out there, we kind of know which category of products best addresses your situation without necessarily getting high. And that's really important.
And I think it's also important to point out is, in various states, depending on, we're talking about folks here or patients in Florida, but if you go to some of the other states that have both an adult use or recreational system and a medical system, you'll find that there are a wider variety of strains available on the medical side to patients. For that reason, is that there's a wide variety of ailments out there and they need more access versus, some folks who are using this kind of recreationally, they're just wanting that immediate gratification of anti-anxiety or anti-pain in many ways. But understanding that, again, consulting your doctor and also consulting the Medical Marijuana Treatment Center as to the products available is what you should do.
Sure. Now, what I do want to point out is, hold on here, I've lost my mouse there for a second. There are different strains that really help with different conditions for glaucoma. Again, when we know what glaucoma is, like eye pressure, neuroprotectants, things like that, there are different strains that are out there to be able to address that. You want to touch on these, Chris?
Well, I mean, I can only speak from personal experience. I myself have ingested blueberry and Maui Wowie. Both very good strains that have great flavor profiles, and as it says on the slide, Maui Wowie will leave you happy and uplifted. So in addition to helping relieve that eye pressure, also helping relieve some of those maybe anxiety that you have around having all that pressure and that pain. Jack Herrera, which is actually named after famous cannabis activist Jack Herrera, is another one that does great for me when my knee swells up, especially after even a hard fall or a hard workout. I'm a bigger guy. I'm trying to get the weight off. I noticed that is a big help. After leaving the gym in the evening, and then if you're feeling sick, you have nausea, the Durban poison in sour diesel, both are strains that I can speak to from personal experience that have been great in helping curb that and stopping the vomiting. So
yeah, what I love, if you're new to medical cannabis, the names of these products are really great. I mean, If you take a look at the names of the pharma industries, they're trying to make up names of products that are out there. The cannabis industry is pretty much the same way. They're kind of colorful names, but they are very effective, and they're pretty consistent across a number of all the dispensaries. I know that Superbud is really good for the terpenes that are there. Also helps with memory, and that's something that a lot of people need to pay attention to. But I use Jack Herrera as well. That's one of the things. Inflammation is something that I pay a lot of attention to. If I can keep the inflammation down in my body, I can in fact help. Help relieve the pain. Now, with regard to glaucoma, it's important that we have something that's there that does address the pain, and that also be able again to take that pressure off. And that's why we've kind of researched a few strains that really could be able to potentially help you. And again, talk to the person at your dispensary. They should be able to give you information that can help you really land a product that can help you quite a bit.
And one thing I want to touch on, a lot of doctors, holistic medicine practitioners have, come up with this, theory, hypothesis that inflammation is the root cause of the vast majority of disease in the human body. So anything that you can take that can reduce inflammation is always a good first step. But understanding that a lot of the over-the-counter pharmaceuticals available to you that can help reduce inflammation also in the long term can cause stomach or liver damage, versus cannabis doesn't have those same side effects. So for those of you who are new to cannabis, or if you grew up in the Reagan era and the Just Say No era, you may have some trepidation about using this as a medical treatment. But the fact is that it reduces inflammation without those side effects that you may see from some of the over-the-counter pharmaceuticals that you can get access to and utilize, which can damage your stomach or your liver.
Yeah, I know that, and I'll use myself as an example. When I had my knee operation, or the knee replacement, I worked with Jewett Orthopedic, which is a fairly well-known orthopedic surgery center here in Orlando. In fact, I think they're in a number of different places now, but I was their guinea pig for using medical cannabis as a post-surgical treatment. And I was working with, there were 4 other people that were in the study, and they used pharmaceutical products. I literally, from the time I left the hospital, I was operated on Monday. I left the hospital on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I didn't take any pharmaceuticals. I had to take pharmaceuticals in the hospital because legally that's the only way you can do that. But when I left the hospital, I literally went into the parking lot, took some drops and hit a vape pen. And by the time we drove, my wife drove the car to the street, my pain level was down to a 1 from a 9, which is what it was before. And I've been able to do that almost every day to keep my pain level below a 1. Now, I bring that up because I had an interesting experience as going through that. I used the concept that THC was good for pain, inflammation was being addressed by CBD. And one night I ran out of THC, the THC product I was using. So I used more CBD, and what happened was my pain went away. And I was really surprised. So what I did when I went in, I talked to my doctor. He said it was really simple, because what we're doing with your neck is we're trying to relieve the inflammation. And that's the same that's going on with your leg. So what's interesting is as we reduce that inflammation, the pain was going down. That makes complete sense. And it caused me to understand that sometimes more CBD helps with the situation as opposed to THC. And that's the good balance that's out there to pay attention to.
Marc, that anecdote's a perfect segue into the next slide, if we can go to it.
Sure.
Yeah. So understanding that there are various methods of ingestion. And to me and my organization, with us at NORML, we firmly believe your method of ingestion should be up to you. It's your body. It's a decision between you and your doctor. And too often than not, in this state, the politicians have tried to inject themselves into that, which is why we have certain rules around smokable flower in the state of Florida. The fact is, as Marc touched on in his anecdote, is that sometimes you need immediate relief. And combusting cannabis, smoking it, if you will, or vaping it, can get you a more immediate relief than the time it takes for an edible or a tincture to take effect in your body. So again, depending on your condition, depending on the seriousness of your pain, you should consult your doctor and understand that these various standard forms of dosing and methods of ingestion take effect at different levels. And again, I have to caution folks, if you're utilizing something such as an edible, which takes longer to work, again, like Marc said, go slow at first, because one of the main things that you hear throughout the media in the modern era is people didn't feel they're edible at first. They want relief, and then they take more, and then you got a double dose kicking you in the back of the head when both of those doses kick in on you. So I recall a funny story of the first time I took my wife to Colorado. Went to a dispensary. They had these little cookies that were about that big. 10 of them came in a tube, and they were each 10 milligrams a piece. Well, I turned my head. I was having a conversation with a friend. Before I knew it, she had already eaten 4. And by the time those 40 milligrams kicked in, she was out. The night was over. I had to take her back to the hotel room. So again, use caution when dosing and understanding. Consult your doctor as to what product works best for you. For some people, smoking doesn't work for them because they may have lung or upper respiratory issues. For other people, smoking is vital because of their respiratory issues and that they need to cough up phlegm or other issues that they have with their lungs. So again, it's between you and your doctor as to what's best for you. A lot of this may be trial and error at first. So as Marc said, go slow, and then you can always increase your doses as necessary.
Yeah, and really, I think the main key to any medication, including cannabis, is listen to your body. Your body will tell you what's working and what's not working. You don't need a doctor to tell you what works and what doesn't work. Now, it also, I want to say that you need to have some patience because, for example, if you use a sublingual drop, which is putting drops underneath your tongue, it could take 15 to 40 minutes to work. But it'll work for 4 to 6 hours. In my case, when I wake up in the morning, I have on my nightstand some sublingual drops that I use to be able to address both my pain and also my inflammation. But I really don't want to wait. In my case, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes to work. I found after over 4 years of working with it, I want to get rid of that pain right away. So I also have a vape pen on my nightstand. And literally when I take a hit out of my vape pen immediately, within a minute or two, my pain will go from a level of 7 or an 8 down to a level of 1. Now, the first time that happens, I remember saying to my wife, what the hell is going on? It was positive. But I was just amazed. I was like, somebody took a rag, wiped my back, and all the pain went away. That really is something that I'm now able to use my vape pen, so I get that immediate relief right away. I'm able to start my day, and then as the sublingual drops kick in, I'm able to use that to take me up to the middle of the day. In my particular regime, I use it 3 times a day. I have to have a 24-hour program for my pain management. So I have something in the morning, I have something in the early afternoon, and I have something in the evening that I take to be able to manage my particular pain. But this is where vape pens, and so you can kind of mix and match your dosing methods based on what's comfortable for you.
Yeah, Marc, that brings up a good point. My wife was diagnosed with ovarian cyst a few years back, and she had extreme nausea. She couldn't keep food down, and cannabis concentrates such as shatter, crumble were very helpful in the morning. She would need to do 1 or 2 small dabs of shatter to get herself going in order to be able to go to work. And the vape pen helped supplement throughout the day to keep the nausea down and to help with the anxiety that she was experiencing. So then when she got back home, then she could have an edible in the evening to help her go to sleep and keep things down until she was healed. One of the interesting things about this is that in her utilizing cannabis over 3 months, a 5-centimeter cyst on her ovaries entirely disappeared. Now, whether I can contribute that to the cannabis use solely, that remains up for medical science to determine. But the fact is that those cannabinoids, if you all remember on the cannabinoid wheel that we were covering, some of them do have anti-cystic properties.
Yeah. Now, again, and some people, that's really important, Chris, it really is, you got to really try some things and find out what works. Now, some people, they're not into sublingual drops. They prefer capsules. Again, capsules are available. They take a little bit longer to work, 30 minutes to 2 hours, but they last a lot longer. And that's because in sublingual drops, that cannabis goes underneath your tongue, that goes immediately into your bloodstream. So it immediately is absorbed and starts taking effect much quicker. Capsules go into your stomach and they have to be absorbed by your stomach fluids. Your digestive system has to break down the capsule. And so it takes a little bit longer to work, but it can be used. And you have to be a little bit careful with capsules because about 20% of the product is actually used up by your stomach's process of digestion. So you typically need a little more medication with capsules than you would with sublingual drops to address your particular situation.
And Marc, there is one method of ingestion not on here that some of our participants may be shocked to hear, but suppository. particular, for those of you who know the famous duo of Cheech and Chong, Tommy Chong was suffering from stage 4 colon cancer, and
Right
he
here.
utilized cannabis suppositories as a dosing form in order to treat his cancer. So one of the main things for folks, a good rule of thumb is if you're suffering from some chronic debilitating condition, getting the cannabis to the close to the source as possible is vital. So, for folks who are suffering from, certain areas of pain, utilizing topicals over those areas, transdermal patches. But again, if you need immediate relief, combusting it, through flour or through concentrates or some of these sprays and topicals that they have, can give you immediate relief. If you've smoked on a vape pen, you can feel it almost immediately as well.
Yeah, I know that I'm a huge fan of well, I like edibles, but also topicals and transdermal patches are important. Topicals work right away. And I know, like when I had my knee surgery, and also with my back, whenever it gives me some difficulty, I use topicals. And again, it only lasts an hour or two, but it's immediate. It's there. Now the transdermal patches are really interesting. I almost always wear a patch. I would say that 4 or 5 days out of 7, you'll find me with a transdermal patch. And the reason for that is because, again, I'm trying to manage pain and inflammation. And so the CBD patch helps me manage the inflammation. All I have to do is regulate my one thing called the THC content for the pain. And then I can do that on demand. And same thing with if I use the THC patch the other way around, it works for the inflammation. Mostly I use CBD patches and one-to-one patches, because what I'm able to do is I'm getting that, in this case, 72 hours. That's 3 days of medication. And it really helps me be able to, with my regime, be able to help me be able to take the medication and do what they call microdosing. And microdosing is where I get a little bit of medicine each day. And that little bit of medicine it really helps to be able to provide the body the resources it needs to be able to heal itself.
Indeed. And Marc, also to touch on, no other medicine that's commonly used has such stringent regulations as cannabis does in the United States of America. So for those of you who might be traveling with family, maybe you're going out of state, maybe you're going on a cruise, transdermal patches can essentially give you that relief that you need without taking the risk of trying to, smuggle contraband across state lines or across a plane or on a cruise ship. So understanding that those time releases of methods of ingestion can be very helpful when you're traveling and you're restricted in your own medical use of cannabis.
Sure. And again, it really depends on, as we mentioned earlier, medical cannabis is really a personal experience. It depends on your body, what's out there. My body responds very naturally and very nicely to transdermal patches. Again, I use CBD and mainly one-to-one patches, and it really works out very well to be able to help me manage in my regime that's out there. Highly recommend looking at. I'm going to go one thing, go back to edibles for a second. Edibles are very popular and they do work. They're a very effective method for medical cannabis. Be careful though, because they take 15 to 40 minutes to work. And as Chris found out with his wife, they're the cute little brownie, that nice little gummy, all that stuff. It's not like grabbing gummies that you find in the store. Give it time to work. Have some patience.
Marc, I'm glad you mentioned about brownies. One thing that I do want to caution people on when utilizing edibles is that typically you want to utilize edibles that are given to you in a regulated format from these various medical marijuana treatment centers. One of the interesting things about homegrown edibles or just those type of brownies in general is that the brownie itself does not have an equitable distribution of cannabinoids, right? So if you have, let's say, for example, 500 milligrams of THC in a brownie, it is not evenly distributed through that brownie. One of those corners may have 200 milligrams in it. The other corners, not so much. And if you just happen to bite that one corner, right, you're going to have a more interesting experience than the person that you're sharing that brownie with. So again, when utilizing edibles, dosing in smaller amounts and working up incrementally is much safer than trying to eye it on something like a brownie or a Rice Krispie treat. And so I just want to caution and educate folks on that moving forward.
You're right, Chris. The thing is, be cool. Give it time to work. Understand what's going on. It'll help you. It'll help you quite a bit. So you take a look at one of the things we brought up earlier. how do you find your sweet spot? How do you know what works for you? How do you know what products work for you? And this is what we call dosing and getting that right. I think that there's a couple of things in here. Chris, do you want to talk on some of this? You want me to walk through this one?
Well, Mark, we have a question in the chat here. I kind of want to answer live. This slide kind of relates to it. The question is, to treat the ocular pressure, what localized treatment does one use? Should one smoke flower? Is there other method of ingestion that would work better to reduce that pressure? And so, Mark, maybe if you want to touch on that as you're kind of going over these terms here in this slide.
Well, let me go down through here. When you're actually there isn't really a topical right now that you can use for something you can put in your eye that will really help you right now. Not that I'm aware of that's out there, but that doesn't mean that you can't have, again, a one-to-one product, which is THC to CBD, is probably a good place to start. There is the capability to the more THC that you have in the product, the better it is for you with respect to helping you with your glaucoma. But be careful, because again, THC can lead to that high that's out there. The question is does a more systematic treatment like smokable flower work? The answer to your question is yes, bottom line. I tend to, although smokable flower is great, and I'm really a fan of it, but I also found that there's a lot of vape pens that can help you with that as well. And they're a lot easier to carry around, and they're more portable, let's put it that way. So I hope that answers your question. The answer is yes. Okay. So let's talk about the regime. In my case, I have a problem. I have inflammation and I have pain. So it's a 24/7. This isn't something that I can just turn off. Now I do every 6 to 8 weeks. I do stop taking cannabis for a day or two. And why do I do that? I do that because what I want my body to do is I want my body to become less dependent on me helping it out, putting more cannabis in there. I want it to just wake up and go back to work. And it also helps my body just function a little bit better. What I have found, though, is that after about a day to a day and a half, my neck taps me on the shoulder and says, look, you better start putting more cannabis in here because you're going to hurt. And it's true. I'm not addicted to cannabis. What I'm addicted to is getting rid of my pain. And I'm able to get rid of my pain without getting high. And I'm able to go out there and I'm able to adjust to my life, do things like this without being able to lead my life without destroying my body. But my regime, again, has to be 3 times a day. There are certain people that only need, for example, once or twice a day. For example, in glaucoma, you can have something where you do something in the morning, maybe in the evening, and then, of course, if you really want to be diligent, something in the middle of the day that works. That's called your regime, how many times you take it. Chris, you want to talk about microdosing?
Sure. Microdosing usually means taking small portions of medicine. It's important to note that many medicines can be used this way. One of the main things that's being proposed right now is utilizing psilocybin, also known as magic mushrooms, at a microdose level to help treat depression and PTSD in veterans. So a microdose is typically about 1/10 or 1/20 of a full dose. So again, like Marc was saying, for some people, just having a small hit of a vape pen regularly throughout the day can be looked as microdosing, or taking, smaller amounts of a tincture throughout the day. So that way you have more of an even type of keel when it comes to your treatment regimen versus the spikes and dips that you may have throughout the day. It really depends on your lifestyle. If you're someone who's retired and you don't have somewhere necessarily to be, but at the same time, you may want to be able to go out and do things too without necessarily being stuck in the couch. Like I said, that indica can give you the, in the couch type of lock where, your body feels, very relaxed, and you can find it difficult to be active. All in all, again, consult your doctor and start off slow and see what works for you. And then eventually that kind of segues into the next term, which is—
Well, before you leave that thought, one of the reasons I use the transdermal patches is because they let me microdose. It makes it very simple. It's a very effective microdosing technique. I'm sorry, go on to titration, please.
Yeah, titration is how you can limit those potential side effects we were talking about, like the time that my wife decided she was going to eat 4 cookies instead of taking 1 and then waiting for it to kick in. In titration, you want to start at a low dose, and over the course of several days or several weeks, up titrate the dose until you're achieving maximum effectiveness, until you've hit that target dose that you're looking for, and that you're able to minimize any type of side effects. So again, as Marc said, the best thing to do with any type of cannabis treatment is to start slow, start small. You can always increase, but understand that once you hit a certain point, you're past the point of no return. There's no way to decrease the dose once you've already taken it. So again, just to caution yourself when utilizing these products for their first time. You can always take more. You can't take less after you've taken it.
Great. Now you can, again, if you start taking the product and you use a little bit too much THC, it's based on your THC tolerance, you can use CBD to help you come down off that high. It's out there.
And that kind of segues into this next part about the importance of journaling. A lot of evidence is anecdotal in nature, but you would be doing the world a big help. You'd be doing your doctor a big help by, just notating some key points when you do dose, like the time of day, the amount that you're taking, whether you took it on an empty stomach or what did you eat. Also, what other medications are you taking? And then, how do you feel? Write it down. What are the effects that you feel? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel sleepy? Do you feel energized? And then also understanding how long did it take for you to take effect? If you try an edible product from one of the medical marijuana treatment centers, does it take 15 minutes before you feel it? Is it going to take 30 minutes? Is it taking an hour? Again, everybody's body's different. Everybody's metabolism is different. And so utilizing medical cannabis therapy is about doing what's right for you and your body. And the best way you can do that is by journaling. So that way you can understand what are the overall effects and what's happening with your dosing. So you and your doctor can put your heads together to find the right treatment plan for you.
I have to tell you, when I did that post follow-up with Jewett to my knee surgery, and I was working, I had to journal because I submitted a report, after 3 months, 6 months, and a year, and I wasn't journaling before that. I'll tell you, that wasn't something I really thought I had to do. When I started journaling, I started noticing some significant patterns. I started noticing that if I ate something, I had this particular, and I took cannabis, I had this reaction, or if I didn't eat, I had this other reaction. And it began to let me understand how my body reacted to cannabis and what I should take and when I should take it. And it made a big, big difference. So don't just throw it out there. And by the way, if you look at the, we talked earlier about the medical Mmtc patient information brochure. In there, one of the pages has a whole page on what you can use to be able to do this journaling and be able to keep your journal. So it's something to pay attention to. Cool. Chris, let's talk about the do's and don'ts about using cannabis. You want to take this, or want me to chart it?
Sure. So, looking at just basic guidelines for medical marijuana use, do's, choosing the right product that's been independently tested for purity, potency, and safety. Well, what does that mean? Well, here in the state of Florida, the Department of Agriculture essentially regulates, what can be sprayed on a crop and such. You always want to, know that the medicine you're getting is safe for your body. And so you want to ask these questions. You want to look for testing. Feel free to question your medical marijuana treatment center when you go in. Ask them to show you the tests that they have for their products to make sure that they're safe from mold or mildew, from pest or pesticides, or from other heavy metals that can all be out there in the environment.
A lot of people ask, while you're in the dispensary, you can actually ask the bud tender, and they'll show you the studies. They'll show you the information that's out there. They'll show you what, not only the terpene profile, but they'll show you the testing. And what's important is make sure there's an independent lab testing it, not just the organization that's doing it. And all dispensaries here in Florida are that way. But that's absolutely critical to know that there's a product that's out there. I know that 1971 study was done, and it was actually done with a group that did not have tested products. And that's something that was very, very careful. You can, by the way, if you go home and you leave the dispensary and you want to know what's in the product, you can always call up that dispensary. They have a call center, and they'll either talk to you, but give you the information over the phone. They'll fax it or email you the information about the product, about the tests that were done on the product that you purchased.
Yeah, well said, Marc. One of the things that I think is important, and it was brought up, as some folks mentioned in the chat, your diet, how you exercise, your psychological health, All these factors are part of achieving wellness. Cannabis is just one part of an overall treatment plan that you and your doctor should be consulting with. But making sure that you're utilizing it in a responsible manner, that you don't operate heavy machinery, that if you're going to go to the gym after you utilize it, maybe be careful with heavier weights and such. But all in all, it is not the end all be all. It's not a miracle cure. And it has different effects on everyone's body. So understanding that there are other parts to being well, like how you eat. I can say this again, just anecdotally from my own experience. If you binge all night on Taco Bell, and then the next morning you wake up and you take a high dose of cannabis, your body may be like, oh no, I've been poisoned by eating all this processed food. Let me bring it back up, and you're going to have a bad morning. So just being aware that everybody's body's different. Everybody has different effects. But again, that also is based on the type of product that you're using. So another do is choosing an oral product rather than an inhaled product, and starting with low doses, especially in the evening, because as we said, rest, relaxation, putting your body in a restful state is part of the healing process. And so, utilizing oral products such as sublingual drops or edibles oftentimes can have a much more impactful effect than combusting it. When you light cannabis on fire, about 98% of the medicine is actually being burnt up. So understanding that you're getting much more value, much more medicinal value by using oral-based products, and being able to, again, start with slow doses and increase it as necessary.
Yeah. And then also set some realistic goals.
Yeah, exactly. Establish those goals of treatment within a realistic time. For example, if you are looking for a reduction in knee pain that's going to allow you to walk around the block within the first 2 weeks, make sure that you find that sweet spot of a dose. One of the things that can happen is if you take too much, you're not going to be walking anywhere. You're going to be on the couch or in bed taking a nap. So if being active again is one of your goals, finding that sweet spot in your dosing and consulting your doctor around those treatment goals is vital.
And how it relates to glaucoma is you're actually sometimes managing pain. You're managing a number of different factors. Set the goal that you're trying to accomplish to be able to address your situation with glaucoma. And of course, naturally tell your doctor about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yep. Talk to your doctor. That consulting your doctor is vitally important throughout this process. Now,
in this era, in 2021, a lot of people say, well, my doctor's not really into medical cannabis, and my advice is get another doctor.
Yes.
Most of the good doctors today are paying attention to medical cannabis. They understand the benefits of it. They're not schooled in it, and they'd like to get more information. There's absolutely no question about that, and so would we. But to discount it completely, I think, is not going with their Hippocratic oath. I find majority of doctors, when I got into business 4 or 5 years ago, doctors were really pushing back on medical cannabis. Today, I'm talking to friends, I'm talking to family, where the doctors are actually recommending looking at medical cannabis as one of the treatment options to address the situation that they're being addressed, like glaucoma. Example, it's there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, looking at the don'ts, right? What shouldn't you do when thinking about utilizing medical cannabis? Don't make CBD isolate, just CBD your first choice for pain relief. Consider THC as a supplemental treatment option. Some of you have asked today about, is Delta 8 just as effective as Delta 9? Delta 8, if you're trying to look at a overall effects, it has a much more diminished effect than Delta 9, but it's still effective. To Marc's point earlier, the vast majority of medicines that we find to be most effective have a 1-to-1 THC to CBD ratio, and those products are available in the medical marijuana treatment centers throughout the state.
Yeah. And a lot of people, some people, they use a 20-to-1, 20 CBD to 1 THC. That's what's comfortable for them. I know my wife is very, very sensitive to THC, so we keep her ratios of CBD to THC pretty high, and that works out very, very well. There's other people that they're more THC tolerant. Again, like alcohol, some people can take more of it than others. Just find out what that sweet spot is. That's what's important, and that's what that's what we talked about in our previous slide about the titration and journaling and things like that. But especially in the case of pain, you need to have some THC to be able to address pain. That's it. CBD is good. Delta 9 is great. There's a big craze going on for it right now. But if you want to address pain, you got to address THC. Yep. That's safe to say, Chris?
Yeah, and that goes to making sure that non-medical practitioners aren't the ones that you're going to manage your chronic pain and your treatment plan. Pain management is a decision between you and your healthcare team, which should be you and your primary physician. And if that primary physician is not certified in Florida to recommend medical cannabis, you should seek a medical marijuana doctor. There are over 2,500 in Florida right now. And, in the various guides and links here at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to connect with them. So, and also understanding that if you have arthritis or other conditions, don't stop your prescribed medications and think, oh, I'm just going to go straight to cannabis. Before you stop doing any of your current treatment regimens, discuss it with your doctor. For some doctors, they may have concerns about you just stopping something, completely. And also consult your doctor as to possible interactions that THC or CBD may have with existing medications that you're taking.
Sure, that's really important. Yeah, I think hopefully this will help people get started. And if you are, even if you're using it, you've been using it for a while, these are some do's and don'ts that can help you become more effective. Again, my goal with this webinar is to really have, if one person can have a better experience with cannabis or find out that cannabis helps them get their life back, we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. Chris, tell us about Suncoast NORML. You're kind of involved in it.
Well, yeah, we are in the trenches every single day fighting. Our goal is to make sure that all patients and responsible cannabis users' civil rights are protected, and that you have safe and access to your medicine. If you want to learn more about our chapter, if you want to become a member and be part of the advocacy movement, I welcome each and every one of you to join us. We do our best to understand that cannabis does create a sense of community among many people. And cannabis has been part of the counterculture movement in this country since the 60s, but it has gone mainstream. To quote Peter Tosh in his song, legalize it, doctors smoke it, nurses smoke it, judges smoke it. And the fact is that this is widely used as a treatment by over 100 million Americans in this country. And so if you want to be part of the cannabis community, if you want a safe place where you can talk to other patients, caregivers, and other activists and see, what's worked for them, and also just to have a great time and do it by protecting the patients and the consumers out there, please, by all means, visit our website, suncoastnorml.org, and get involved. I'm more than happy to have you. Right now, there are some key legislative fights here in the state of Florida. One in particular is politicians in this state are looking to cap the percentages of THC allowed in these products that are currently distributed at the medical marijuana treatment centers. In our opinion, what this means is that they're going to essentially cap the potency of these products, which means you're oftentimes going to have to consume twice or 3 times the amount of these diminished products in order to achieve that sweet spot to get relief and to live a healthy and productive life. And to us, that effectively is a tax on our patients, and it's not right. So we're asking everyone to contact their legislator right now and ask them to stop and vote no on the THC caps bill that's going through the legislature. But again, it's not all gloom and doom. Organization has also written legislation to expand the number of qualifying conditions, to allow for tourist reciprocity. Many times, as we said, the Schedule I status presents a problem for tourists and travelers. Currently, Florida does not honor other states' medical marijuana ID cards, and we'd like to change that. Also, there are many issues in the state of Florida right now in various jobs. People are being fired or precluded from jobs for medical cannabis use. And so we've written and working on, getting our sponsors bill on employment protection through the state legislature, in addition to adopting a cannabis patient's bill of rights. So people cannot be precluded from organ transplants for being medical marijuana patients. So people cannot be removed from their ALFs or housing for being medical marijuana patients. And so all in all, for all the bad legislation that's out there, there's 10 other good bills that aren't getting hearings right now. And that's where our organization comes into all of it, is that we want to make sure that we're doing the best by you, the patients, and making sure that you have safe access to this medicine, which can change your life.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of reefer madness, which really was propagated by a lot of people that were really trying to deregulate and try to control cannabis, and make it brought this prohibition about, which has really caused the lives of literally millions of people, both from the standpoint of the lives as well as the comfort zones. That reefer madness really hasn't gone away. I mean, we talk about the THC cap here in Florida, that's going on in California, it's going on in other places. This is a group of people that just want to be able to get cannabis out of our system. And, you know, it's not based on science and it's not based on facts. All the science and all the facts that are out there point to cannabis being an effective medical treatment. But again, we have lobbying groups, you know, and I think we know who they are. We know the pharma groups, we know the alcohol groups. We know that there's a number of different groups that really don't want cannabis to be around because they want to sell more of their products, and that we get. But I think it's important that the patients have a level playing field to understand what can help them, especially in a product that you aren't going to die. You know, we're looking at, there's a famous quote by the government that 22 people are dying from opioids a day. That actually number is actually more like 52. And so what we're trying to do is provide safe products to help patients both manage their pain, manage their PTSD, manage their glaucoma without necessarily putting their life at risk. And I think, Chris, your organization is doing a great job to really try to address a lot of these reefer madness syndromes that's out there today.
Indeed, you can visit our website. You know, we have the schedule posted for all of these medical marijuana awareness seminars that happen each quarter, and I think it's vitally important that folks, you know, educate themselves. You know, on the website we have a legislative tracker, so you can see what bills are moving. You can better understand it, and there's various community events that we host at our headquarters in Tampa, Florida. So by all means, you know, get involved. Become part of the community. Understand that I don't take a salary to be the executive director. All the proceeds, no one from our board takes a single check. Everybody is volunteers, and we put every last dollar into the advocacy arm of the organization, ensuring that each and every one of you have a voice in the halls of government, and that, you know, you have safe access to these products, which are bringing you relief.
Yeah, and two things that NORML does, and I think it's important to point out. Number one, it's a community where you can talk to like people like yourself about the situation. And I know that you don't feel like you're odd. You don't feel you're doing something crazy. You can get good information from other people about what they're doing. And the second, and probably one of the most important things, is one of the best information sources about medical cannabis and about its use is NORML. You have a set of articles. You have a lot of information that's put out there that I think is absolutely vital. When you're looking at researching, a lot of people looking at researching information, you know, they think about, well, I'm going to go out to Google and I'm going to look at Leafly. NORML is a tremendous source of information on medical cannabis. I mean, I looked up your glaucoma articles today, just getting ready for this. It's something that pay attention to the fact that there's a lot of good information that's out there. You're more than just legislative, you're also educational.
Indeed, indeed. And our chapter, the Suncoast chapter, is based in the Tampa Bay area. But understanding, if you just go to normal.org, if you drop the Suncoast off, that is the Nationals organization's website, which is headquartered in Washington, D.C. And is, like I said, it's been around since 1970. The organization itself operates on like a federalist structure. We have our main organization operating in the halls of government and Congress and such. And then there's individual chapters in each state in various regions working to deal with state and local issues. And so I think it's important to, you know, that you utilize those different databases that are on the website, whether it's for education, if you need legal resources for, you know, maybe something that you've gotten in trouble with cannabis charges. By all means, please feel free to visit the website, normal.org. Check us out in our local chapter at suncoastnormal.org. And I look forward to seeing many of you get involved in the movement.
That's great. Chris, I think, well, let's kind of wrap this up. I know we've got a long webinar. One of the things you mentioned earlier is really what you're looking at doing is really have a balanced life. You know, restore the control of your body and the control of your health. You know, exercise, daily healthy habits do that. You mentioned that earlier. I find that, you know, both meditation and mindfulness, just spending a few minutes listening to your body. You know, you're not necessarily going into the Zen mode, but just being able to sit down, listen to your body, what the problem is, and then looking at some cannabis potentially options to address that particular situation in a way where, again, using the methodologies that we use can really help you quite a bit in paying attention to self-care. I think that's really important. Yeah, you brought a lot of that up earlier. Chris, do you have any closing comments you want to make?
Look, cannabis is a medicine that has been utilized by human beings for several thousand years. Archaeologists have discovered, you know, remains of the cannabis plant being utilized in every ancient culture. And even throughout history, other cultures have gone through periods of you know, vast medical use and prohibition in itself. We're currently in this country going through one of those phases where prohibition is being chipped away at little by little, and understanding that the United States by next month will be essentially the only country in North America that does not have essentially legal access to cannabis. Canada has legalized it for adult use purposes. Mexico is finalizing its adult use and legal system. And so all in all, I would say this much: as more and more cannabis products become available, it is vital that you utilize the legal cannabis market where your products are tested for safety and pesticides, molds, and other things. Not going to knock the legacy market, the black market. There are some great growers out there who have produced quality products over the years, but also understanding that not every black market grower has the high ethical standards that some of these others may have. And so I think that's why medical marijuana programs throughout the 50 states are vital, so that people can know that they have safe access and peace of mind in the products that they're getting. And again, before you utilize any product, consult your own self, consult your doctor, and make sure that it is the decision that you're making with all the best knowledge and education going into it.
Great. Well, Chris, I want to thank you very much for your help. More importantly, I want to thank your help in all your sponsorships and a lot of the work that you've been doing. And please keep up the fight. We're very much behind you. I want to thank everybody who really tuned into this webinar. And it's been a long one. It's been an hour and 40 minutes. Hopefully, again, hopefully you've got some information out there that can help you and help you get your life back. We want to thank you very much for that. I'm going to throw in a plug. Next week, we have another webinar on Wednesday, and this is on gastrointestinal disorders and medical cannabis. It's again another popular subject, and we'd like to again welcome you. If you have conditions in there, please tune in and join us. But more importantly, thank you everybody. Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate it, your help. You and I will be in touch tomorrow. But more importantly, everybody, thank you very much, and hopefully we provided some information that can help you. You'll be getting follow-up information through an email, again, with the videos, the presentations, and also the resources that are there. And please let us know how you're doing. We're here to help. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.